I was literally teetering close to my fate of your career is going to be done if you don't figure this out. You can do it, but are your systems effective? I shove it under the rug. And that was the beginning of a recipe for disaster. That's why I'm here. I'm here to teach you how to design your dream life. Welcome back to the Nomadic Nurse podcast. I'm your host, Melanie, the nomadic nurse, but also a woman of God, also a child of God, also a daughter, also an auntie, a sister. I'm all those things before I'm a nurse. And I think we got to remember that in our transitions, in our lives, and all the things that we're doing. I think we need to remember who we are before we are a profession. Sometimes we can get a little bit wound up in the things that, even though we're called to do, doesn't make us identify as such. It's a part of it, but it's not our entirety. So that's something I've spoken about many times before, but today we are going to have a little chit chat about the career path, the transitions that I've done. I'm actually on my way to work. So I'm filming this in my purple koala scrubs and in my figs jacket. And this is all nice and clean. But the truth of the matter is we're going to be chatting a little bit more about testimony. Now, I'm going to give you a brief overview, at least as brief as I can. Just an overview of the transitions, the career journeys, the school journeys, everything. But this is a general overview because I think each problem, pursuit, and payout deserve its own episode. The thing is, I'm not doing this to glorify myself. I'm not doing this for me. What I'm doing is what God wants me to do through all the things that I've been through that He allowed me to go through to help you. So this is purely to show you who I am and how I got here, but all by the grace of God. Y'all know that I love Jesus. And, I felt like that part of this whole podcast, this whole channel was lacking. I assume that everybody just knows who I am. And it's not because it's really not an ego thing. It's because I have this very bizarre belief that we've all been through it. You're kind of fed up of hearing my story, or someone's heard it before, or it's not worthy to be shared. But really it is. And I encourage you to share whatever journey you've been on so you can help others as well, all with a heart posture of love and helping others. And this is what this moment is. I'm going to show you briefly the positives, the negatives, but anything that's negative would always be used for God's glory. So I guess it's all positive. It is all positive because even throughout the times that I've not done very well, there was a problem, there was a great pursuit, and the payout was worth it. It was so worth it because now I'm here. Now I'm here to help you guys do the things to help you not do the things that I did, or do the things that I did do that worked, that may work for you. So take it as it comes. And I just want to make it very clear that anybody that's on the other side of testimonies, it's the way it is. So let's get into it. We're going to start with the career transition. Now, the reason, even though I'm emphasizing a lot on career today, I want to make it clear that there's a reason why at the end of all of this, and when you watch more of my videos, you'll see why, even though I'm dressed as a nurse right now because I'm getting ready for work, and this may sound a little controversial given how I'm dressed right now, I'm not 100% identified as a nurse. I'm Melanie before that. And you are who you are before you are your career, before you are a mother, before you are a father, before you are anything. You are who God designed for you to be, outside of the career, the profession, the titles. So one of the things that I want to emphasize today is we're going to talk about the school journey a little bit. So how I did this. This is going to be anybody that's going through schooling or transitioning education to go into the career path or whatnot. What I did was technically atypical. I went in from high school all the way into nursing school. So I was 17 years old starting nursing school. Some will say, oh, that's so early. Oh yeah, that's great. Listen, it's to each their own. Just because you start something at a young age does not mean it's meant for you in that timing. I ended up doing my first semester. Second semester, I failed. Failure number one was I did not pass my second semester. Not only that, keep in mind, you're transitioning from high school to nursing student or college student, that transition in itself takes a lot of maturity and quickly that I was not ready for, especially when you're going into a program like nursing. I was not ready for that. And it led to my failure because my high school mentality didn't transition into my nursing school mentality. There's a huge gap there. And if I could tell you how to prevent that gap is to early on understand what works and what doesn't. It's a little bit of a trial and error and also asking for help. That is the best way that you're going to get through it, but don't just ask from people that are going through it with you. Ask it from people who have done it. Teachers, past nursing students, all these types of things. Understand what works for you and what doesn't. You got to be so in tune with yourself when you hit college because you're so independent and you got to take so much accountability. So it's all on you to understand what works and what doesn't. Because the teacher will give you everything you need to succeed. You got to evaluate your systems. And that's what I ended up having to do. And funny enough, when I failed that semester, the one thing that I ended up realizing was I didn't think that that career path of nursing was not meant for me. I understood fairly quickly that I was doing something wrong. And my teacher was kind enough to be a guidance and tell me, like, this is where you're going wrong, girl. And I wasn't having an increased depth of understanding. Why? Because my systems were not allowing me to do that. My study methods, my schedule, my personal life balancing with my school life, it was not meshing at all. Keep in mind, while I was in nursing school, I was also dancing professionally and competitively, which was paying for nursing school to a certain degree. So at that period of my life, one thing that we have to really stop and understand is you can do it, but are your systems effective? And do your systems work for you? Something that you're learning from somebody else may not be something that's meant for you. So that's something that we have to be exceptionally accountable about. Going through that period of my time thinking it was not meant for me, I literally stopped and said, okay, let's fix all this. A lot of us have this tendency to stop and I failed. Oh, well, it's not good. Okay, well, I'm going to go to something else. Sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes it's not, because guess what? You'll go into the next career path that you choose or the next program that you choose. And then all of that stuff, you'll go into the next one and then you'll end up realizing that, oh, that's not meant for me. And then that's not meant for you. And then you'll start going through all these things that you believe is not meant for you when truthfully, you don't have systems in place to make it meant for you or to actually spot on and see what's meant for you. For example, I do really, really love law. I think law is so interesting. I know it's not meant for me because there's a certain part of it that I know I won't enjoy it. But I could be successful at it if my systems are effective and my mindset wants to do it. But also at the same time, it has to go with every grain of my being and what God wants me to do as well. One thing that we have to understand is neuroplasticity is a very real thing. Neuroplasticity is rewiring your brain to having such a strong belief system that this is going to be effective because you were like, yeah, it's done. I'm going to do it. Your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and non-reality. You could say, yes, this doesn't hurt. And eventually, guess what? It's not going to hurt. Pain is very much central nervous system. So anyways, that's a whole lot. Just that is an episode in itself. But it did take a lot of rewiring and interesting faith for me to say, I'm meant to do this. I just need to fix my stuff around it because I don't see myself doing anything else. I know this is what I want. But it's also what I didn't realize that God called me to do. Because when I was 18, I remember, even though I wasn't as in tune with him as much as I should have, he still had his hand on me with the little faith that I had. I remember him being like, you're going to do travel nursing. Because at that time, my cousin was involved in it and I was seeing it. Well, wasn't involved. But anyways, it was a conversation, at least. Like there's things that were happening that I was seeing around me in my family that I was like, oh, this is actually very interesting. And then I started doing my own research and it was something that was very possible. And it actually ended up being a passion and look where I am today. Am I in the US? No, but I'm in Canada and I really, really, really enjoy it. Now, once I transitioned out of failing and had to change my systems, I ended up succeeding in passing nursing school. And listen, it wasn't a breeze after. I had to update my systems every single time, but it was definitely something that I was very proud that I succeeded. Now it came to going into the career path. After I passed nursing school, I had to get the licensing exam. I have to pass that and I have to get a job. So one thing that we're allowed to do as nursing students who just recently graduated is we can get grad pending license jobs. So it's called CP in French, but it's GPL in English. And we can get this job without having our license yet and working under a nurse or whatnot. So I got one working in psychiatry. I did that for 3 months. My boss then transitioned and said, listen, like, I'm not going to have many hours for you. Why don't you try emergency or try somewhere else? And when I said, hold up, you said emergency? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I didn't know I can do that. She's like, yes, you can definitely work in emergency. I was like, sign me up. Pretty much. And I ended up getting a job working in emergency, which I thought I ended up loving, because when I was a kid, guess what my parents put me in front of almost every night, if possible? The show ER. It worked. And I fell in love with the ER. Loved the ER. I still love psychiatry and I still loved it. And I was one of the more mature psych nurses there. Funny enough, I loved psych and I loved emerge. And it was just great. So I ended up working in emergency. The two bosses spoke. I'll never forget it because I'm so grateful that my bosses communicated and made this next part of my career. Like, it's just, I'm talking about this and it's like the people that said yes, no matter what other people think about those people. Honestly, like, I'm so grateful for those people giving me my yes. It was, glory to God, love that one. And I get into this entire career path of emergency nursing, and all of a sudden it's this licensing exam that's blocking me. First time I do it in September of 2013, I go through a lot of personal issues, a lot of trauma. Okay, well, it's fine. People fail this exam. Let's do it again. I have 2 more shots. Then March 2014 comes around. I do the exam. I fail it again, realizing that I didn't deal with my challenges in that period of my life personally as well as I should have, and I needed time off. It was trickling into my career. I needed some time off. That accountability was very challenging because I was under a year into nursing and I already burnt out because of personal and professional things. I was working full time and I was trying to numb the things that I was going through with work and not dealing with the exam. And that was the biggest mistake because, again, that's a failed system. But again, that failure taught me something that was so vitally important. That failure of a system taught me that I needed to be accountable for my personal life. And I didn't. It was a very interesting period of my life. And it was a very interesting period where I had to learn to understand that, you know, just because you go through things in your life, it means that you can't just shove it under a rug and not deal with it and think that everything's okay and it's not as big of a deal as somebody else's other traumas that they've been through. Yeah, it's probably not as big, but at the end of the day, it's still something that I have to deal with. And I was so ashamed because I was working in an emergency room where people were coming in, getting shot, having massive heart attacks. And then I'm like, oh, I went through my little thing, meh. And then I shove it under the rug. And that was the beginning of a recipe for disaster. My problems are not big enough. But until they get big enough, which they did, they got big enough where if I don't stop myself now from hurting myself, getting physically sick to such a magnitude, leading myself to mental health issues, because I'm seeing so much in this period. I'm a young nurse, graduated from nursing school, working in psychiatry, seeing violent patients, working in emergency, doing CPR on patients that just came out of a cardiac bypass. The staples are flying and the chest is literally opening because I'm breaking it. And then I'm going through my own personal thing. And I'm like, well, I guess my stuff isn't as important. It did give me a perspective of to understand what other people are going through and that there's so much worse in the world. And it definitely made me understand that certain issues that I was going through was not as big. And I had an issue at that time with making things a big deal. But then I took that way too seriously. I had no boundary of understanding until they got big enough to the point where I was like, oh, wait, I should have taken charge of this like 2, 3, 4 steps ago. And this is what I want you to understand, that as you're transitioning from student to professional or working in a healthcare profession that takes so much physically out of you, mentally, emotionally, spiritually out of you, make sure that when you're in that period of your life, of your career, that you set up systems and boundaries that allow you to heal every single time that you have to do CPR or have to take care of a very acute patient that's going through things while you're vicariously going through it with them. When I was 22 years old, hugging a mother who just lost her son that committed suicide. I'm 22 years old doing this for people. helping people like that, doing CPR on people regularly. There's a part of that where we don't talk about how important it is to understand that we're not normally supposed to be seeing things. We're not programmed to see all of these difficult times. We're not programmed to go through this to this magnitude. And here we are at 22 years old doing all this. And then we're just, oh, well, I guess our stuff is not as important. And then we backpedal, we push it to the back. And then all of a sudden we realize, oh my gosh, I have PCOS, I'm insulin resistant, and that happens, fast forward, which we'll get to. How do you, like, that's just the part that I decided to stop at. There's some people that were like, oh, I have diabetes, I have high cholesterol, I have this and this, and we wonder why our insurance companies don't want to cover us. Our insurance companies, at least where I'm from, their insurance companies, we have such poor insurance policies because we're such high-risk clients. We work in shift work, high-stress environments, at risk of chronic illness, disease, all this stuff. So our insurance policies, when we have to claim things, or at least we're, like in Quebec, it's awful. It's all like you have to pay full price almost for orthotics. It's crazy. Eye coverage, at one point I didn't have eye coverage. I'm not sure now, but at one point I didn't. So I got laser eye surgery. It's just going into this whole discussion and this whole topic of, do we really understand what's going on to our mind and our bodies in this very, very difficult transition? Already there's our bodies transitioning, our minds, and all these types of things. So I had to stop, literally be off of work for 3 months. And then I came back after I was past my licensing exam, and I did it on the 3rd shot. Keep in mind, on the 3rd shot, that was it. I had to pass that 3rd shot or I wasn't going to be a nurse. I was literally teetering close to like my fate of like, your career is going to be done if you don't figure this out. Yeah, I could go back to nursing school, but do I really want to have to do all that? Accountability, right? One thing that I do also have to say is I'm blessed that I went through it, because once I passed that exam, I started my bachelor's degree. And a couple months after that, I got a call from a friend that said, hey, I need help with my licensing exam because I just failed it. And that was the beginning of business for me. That was literally the beginning of business. And I can go into so much depth with that. And that's when I started mentoring nurses, mentoring nursing students, started helping LPNs, RNs, passing licensing exams, helping them with career transitions. And I was given this entire hunger to help people in ways that I wish I was helped in that moment. Not saying that I did not get all that help that I deserved, I did, but I'm just trying to fill in the blanks that I missed that I don't want you to miss in the process. So I started mentoring people. And because of this whole business thing that I created, I started going to networking events. And then I started meeting people that were having bigger businesses, different businesses. And I was like, why can't nurses do this? What's the stigma behind this? And I realized that it was emergency nursing full-time was not meant for me and my body and my mind. I needed to do something else. But part-time emergency does not equal more money. You're getting less money. So guess what? I had to find ways of making different incomes, and I had to find ways to do it strategically, that I enjoyed it, that I was happy, that I wasn't going to get sick, that it wasn't going to drive me to sickness and all that stuff. Mind you, if you let anything get to you, anything can drive you to sickness. Anything, even in the things that you love. So I did the exam, I passed it, I helped as a nursing student, and I went, one student came 5, became 20, became 200 over a couple of years, that I had a 90% success rate. And I give it all to God, even though I was not saved at that time. I ended up developing business relationships, all of these amazing relationships. And then I ended up opening a mobile nursing company, a very small one, just before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit in 2019 to 2020, I ended up saying, we're changing up the narrative now. We are pivoting. I have access to services that many people don't have access to. I'm going to create that access. Because one thing I learned in my bachelor's degree was primary healthcare, which was one of the 6 steps was universality and accessibility. I wanted to increase accessibility. So I did that. That company became a 6-figure company, and I'm so proud of that. And the thing is, I had to remember that I did that because I was covering up a very significant wound in my body, in my mind, in my spirit. I was covering it up with work to such a heavy magnitude that eventually that system failed because it wasn't sustainable. And that's when I had to find Jesus. Literally, I'm not even kidding. That's when I needed faith. I needed faith to save me. So bad. So bad. And I'm so blessed and honored that I had my come to Jesus moment, literally. And it was when the Lord told me that you did all these things really great without me. I'd love for you to do it with me. And now, here it is. And I want to bring up this verse. It's Jeremiah 33, verse 6. Yet I will certainly bring you health and healing, and will indeed heal them. I will let them experience the abundance of true peace. I will restore their fortunes of Judah and Israel, and will rebuild them as in former times. When I found God, after all the things I've been through with business, with all the things I've been through from nursing school and on, I felt like I was being restored. None of the failures that I went through went to waste. And I really do feel like, even though sometimes I'm not the perfect Christian, I'm not the perfect child of God, God still makes me fearfully, wonderfully made, and I'll do my best to be as an imitation of Christ as I can, because I made my career an idol, all this. And I'm so much happier being who I am, who God created me to be, before being my profession. As much as I think my profession is very much a calling, I do think that two things are true, where my profession is as much of a calling, but it is also very much not my identity, or at least my full identity. God uses me as a vessel to help people. That's how I see it. Because all these challenges I've been through, even though I was with or without him, he always sustained me throughout the time with the mustard seed of faith that I had. That business ended up transitioning out into something else, and I made a bad business deal, another episode just in itself. And that bad business deal led into a miraculous opportunity afterwards that I needed God for. So I can definitely go into each problem, showing you the payout of each of one, and to give you I can give you the full laydown, but this overview was meant to show you, this is just a smidgen of what I've been through, like a skim of what I've been through. But I've conquered it, because now I'm a travel nurse. I'm a full-time entrepreneur. This is what God has called me to do, and I'm being obedient to that. The life that God has called you to live, whether it be in a career or as a mom or whatnot, or whoever you're meant to be, you're allowed to design that. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to teach you how to design your dream life, because I've done it. I'm doing it. And I thought in the pandemic, where I had all these resources and all this knowledge and all these things to help others, I feel like it's a disservice for me not to share that with you, so that you can do the same in your way. It doesn't have to look like travel nursing. It doesn't have to be nursing, period. It doesn't have to be healthcare. It can be anything that God has called you to do, because he can restore you even though you've fallen away from him. Just how he restored me. Just like he made you fearfully, wonderfully made, just like how he made me. So I hope this episode resonated with you, and I pray that it's everything you imagined. I'm going to work, but make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and follow us on our social media handles as well that are linked here. And we're going to go into more breakdowns of these problems, pursuits, and payouts, so that way you can succeed through everything that you do. If you want to work with me, make sure to send us a message or an email at info@nomadicnursenetwork.com. And thank you so much for being here, and see you next time. Bye.